Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Eve. So the very first item room here, I would say, had an interesting conundrum in it, and that is when you enter it, of course you see Marshal Zhang, and you fall either in one of two camps. Either you love this item and you're gonna pick it up immediately, and obviously it has a lot of fun synergies, it has a lot of fun components, and I feel like it does change the gameplay somewhat, because now suddenly instead of just kind of focusing on your DPS, you enter a room with a fully charged shot, you unleash it on one or two enemies, and then you're kind of left for a few seconds and you just have to dodge. And in that, of course, time period, it does require you to kind of charge up. You kind of have to be aware of enemies' positions, your own position, how you're actually going to aim at your enemy, and how the knockback is actually going to affect them. So all of those things considering, I feel like this item is a very visceral but also a very different item to how you usually play. And of course, I would imagine there are also people who enter the item room and they're like, Marshal Zhang, I don't like this item because it's annoying to use also. I mean, admittedly, I know just how annoying it can be. Like, if your tier delay is a bit too high, it takes forever to charge. And when you charge it up, sometimes you feel like you're at the peak, like you feel like you're ready to unleash it, but then you stop charging and of course you miss out your shot and you have to charge again. And that can be quite annoying. So I imagine that either you fall into one of those two camps like I mentioned before. Either you love the item and you pick it up because it's a fun item, it has a lot of cool synergies, or you don't like picking it up in the first place because maybe you feel like you don't want to lose that control over your individual tiers. And depending on what you do, of course, you can reroll it because there was a reroll machine in there. And what I find very coincidental, and I would say it's also funny in some regard, is that if you do decide to reroll Monstro Zhang, you get Judas' Shadow in return. And of course, Judas' Shadow is just, I would say, an objectively better item and something I would much rather have than Judas' Shadow, Monstro Zhang, even though I really like this item. So regardless of kind of in which camp you are, I feel like this daily kind of served you well, because if you don't like Monstro Zhang, if you kind of have disdain for it, then you're rewarded by getting Judas' Shadow, and if you do like Monstro Zhang, then you just get this fun item in the first place. And I feel like why I find that so funny is because I feel like in most cases when you decide to reroll, you kind of look at it objectively. Like, is this item above average or maybe below average? And if it's above average, you're obviously going to pick it up. And if it's below average, you're going to try to reroll it. But with Monstro Zhang, it's just really hard to tell. Like I said, it's a very divisive item in my opinion. It maybe falls in the same vein as something like Guillotine. Like, I would imagine some people really like it because it does give you that DPH and tier delay increase. But then again, some people hate it because it just kind of messes with the way you shoot. It makes it so much more unpredictable, and I wouldn't say unpredictable, just more annoying, and just some people value the control they have over their character much more than maybe any potential stat increase. And just depending on your disdain or just maybe how you approach the game, like if you like certain fun items or not, can really set a precedent. And I feel like this is the main reason why this game can never really be competitive. As long as you have reroll machines like this one, and as long as you have that, I would say, human manner, like, it's not really gonna be up to the player to decide when they're gonna reroll an item. Like, someone can decide to reroll an item, it might just be like the dumbest thing in the world, but he can still end up getting rewarded for it. And obviously for that reason you can't look at single daily occurrences, because even if there's something like Tech X and someone is like, I don't really like this item, and they reroll it into something like Brimstone, I don't know how that's gonna happen. Like, you can think of a scenario, but I'm just giving an example. Like, maybe someone thinks the Brimstone is better than Tech X, but obviously they're both great items. But this begs the question, like, why would you even reroll the Tech X in the first place? Like, it's obviously a really good item, there's no reason not to do it. But even if someone decides to do that, they can still be rewarded. And for that reason, of course, you can't just look at a single daily if you want to compare scores. You kind of have to look at multiple amount of them. And for that reason, I feel like you can't just say, oh, someone is a better player because they made this decision on this daily, and for that reason they were rewarded. And just Isaac in general is one of those things where you just get one good item and you can essentially, that can be the difference between a win and a loss. And when you kind of have all of those things considering, I feel like this game becomes much more about just how do you approach the game, do you have a fun time doing it, and at the end I feel like that's the most important. Like, I decided to pick a Monstro Zhang knowing that I'm gonna have a fun time with it, especially with Tech X later on. You just shoot a bunch of little lasers from your mouth, and if I decided to go and reroll it, of course with Judas' Shadow, I think I would also enjoy that. But I think in the end position, like in the first place, I do just enjoy having an item like Marshal Zhang more, because it doesn't show up often, and in the end I feel like it does produce a much more memorable run as opposed to just getting more damage, for example, even if that is maybe a better thing if you're trying to get a good daily score. But nevertheless, so we did kind of go through those notions. I did kind of talk about my thoughts on the subject. And now we're kind of fighting boss rush, and I wasn't too concerned, even if I wasn't really dealing that much damage. We basically didn't get any damage upgrades. We got some tier delay downgrades, and that's obviously quite good with an item like Tech X and Martial Zang, but it still felt like it took us a long time to charge, and overall it just really wasn't that influential. And of course the Eye of Belial that I mentioned before doesn't really synergize with Tech X, so we also kind of lose on that offensive punch. But like I said, it's Tech X, obviously it's one of the best items in the game, so I can't complain too much. So what I was doing there is, of course, I found a blank card at some point, and also had the Temperance card. So I just kind of start spawning the blood banks in the boss rush as I was actually going through it, and we were just kind of spawning them in one corner. A few of them actually got blown up by, I think, one of the little gurglings that charge and spawn troll bombs, but a few of them survived in the right bottom corner, and I was able to kind of use those to play just to get more money. And of course, when I did that, because I have Bloody Penny, also got some coins as a result, and I also had Ivy back. So I kind of spent like 10 minutes there just picking up some money off the ground, getting more red health, and eventually, of course, because this is not really a sustainable tactic, because there's a 50% chance you're gonna get half of a red health every time you pick up a coin, and because you spawn like 1.5 coins on average, you can do the math and you can notice that in the long run you're just not gonna be able to sustain that, and eventually you will run out of money and out of hearts. I was kind of looking for that to happen, or until I would hit the soft cap. I don't think I hit it, but I do think I came very, very close to it, so I feel like this was a very fruitful breaking opportunity, and definitely did give us quite a bit of points as I actually went through it. So that took about 10 minutes, and of course I stuck with the blank card because I intended to repeat the strategy on basically every next floor. And what I did is, of course, I explore, and as soon as I have the full charge, I go in a single room, usually the starting room, I spawn a blood bank there, and I kind of play a multiple amount of them until eventually I get enough money. And because I also get Swallowed Penny, I think it's called, every time I pick up a coin, there's also a chance of me getting a key, and because I'm kind of missing out on keys and bombs, keys are obviously very good because they're gonna give me more points than just coins in general. And of course, I still have the Bloody Penny to kind of keep this sustainable, and so I can actually play it multiple times. And it's even less sustainable in the later floors because instead of only taking half of a heart of damage, you actually take a full heart of damage. So we would either need the wafer and something like a piggy bank, or maybe even Swallowed Penny, and that would allow us to kind of go forever. But we didn't have that, and I'm kind of glad, because, you know, you can break the game for like 20-30 minutes without hitting the soft cap, depending on how fast you do it. So to be limited in some way, but just saying, oh, the blood machine broke, I can exit the floor now, is a relief, and it feels like it's a much more manageable way to actually get more points without it being too overbearing, because the run didn't take like 2 hours, it only took like 50 minutes in total, and I feel like in the end that's a much more enjoyable way to actually approach the game, as to try maybe and pick up a single heart, drop it with a jar, pick it up again, and just kind of keep doing that for like 30 minutes. And of course, when we did get to the end, we still didn't get more any tier upgrades, I mean damage upgrades in general. We got a Squeezy, which didn't really help that much. It only reduced our tier delay by 3. It felt a little bit better, and with the Horror Babylon it was actually enough to kind of do sustainable damage to enemies, and I didn't struggle too much, but in the end I definitely feel like this run could have been a bit stronger in that department. But like I said before, like I said many times, it doesn't really matter how strong your run is. What matters is, do you get to the end without taking too much damage? And I feel like in this particular case I managed to do that quite successfully. So our shred bonus is 9,600, and if we got something like 99 bombs as well, it would be something like 13 to 14,000. So we were close to actually breaking in some sense, like hitting the soft cap, but not quite there yet. And our item penalty was also quite high because I picked up a lot of blood bags, and our end score is 8, which I think I was like 4th or maybe even 5th on the Gridbat leaderboards when I actually checked the daily. So overall it was an enjoyable daily. It had breaking, which I would say wasn't too overbearing because it was so controllable, and because we were kind of limited within just the natural confines of the game. And I feel like in the end it was a fun run. We got Tech X, I have 25 luck, so whenever you have so much luck, I feel like that's a good indication that it was a lucky run, that it was a good run, and I hope that you enjoyed this one as much as I did, and I hope to see you next time.